It was easier back then, but the consequences were a lot greater. So, because we were doing a lot of criminal activity.
Yeah.
And now, fortunately, I've been doing pretty well, and I don't have to look over my shoulder. So it depends on how you look at it. But never again will I make the kind of money that I made when I was on the street. I mean, that's an anomaly.
What was the turning point for you?
I met a young woman who is now my wife of 29 years, and I just knew that she couldn't handle the lifestyle that I was part of, and I had to make a choice. It was either her or that life, and I had been in the life for quite some time and realized that she was the better choice.
So when it comes to your financial expertise, because clearly you have a lot, whether it was when you were doing the criminal enterprises or what you're doing now, where does that come from?
It's kind of innate, I guess, and people have asked me all the time, and the book that I wrote kind of, talks about this. Business is business. And whether you're doing it on the street illegally or you're doing it legitimately, there's certain principles that carry in both ways.
Okay, like which ones? I mean, what are your top 5 principles, let's say, top
for me,
3?
People said, well, Michael, you were a brilliant businessman. And I don't think I was. But my talent was a couple of things. Number one, I always recognized the good deal. Okay, I didn't bother myself with things I knew that wouldn't work. Number two, I never micromanaged. I knew what I did best, and I delegated the rest. And I delegated to the people that I thought I could trust, and I watched over them, and maybe I made them think that I knew more than them, but at times I didn't, but watched them.
So bluffing is key.
It's kind of key. You got to do it right. You got to do it with a straight face, and you got to, they got to think you know what you're talking about. And, be well prepared. And I always had a plan. A lot of people go into business, they don't have a plan, they kind of wing it, and that doesn't work. I always knew what I wanted to do and then tried to carry it out. And then for me, negotiation was a big factor, especially in my old life. We were always negotiating over things that were very serious, and, in a business deal especially, the consequences could have been severe if you lost. So, the art of negotiation, I think, is very important to be successful in business.
Okay, so Michael, in your book, your top investment tips, and this is interesting. You say, A, stay out of the stock market. Don't even bother. B, invest in gold and silver. Explain why.
Well, again, this is back in the United States. I did a lot of things at times with people in Wall Street, and I just don't trust them. That's it. I mean, bottom line.
There you go. All right.
A lot of guys are shady, and they did shady things with me, and so I don't trust them.
All right.
And I don't like other people that I don't know really well taking care of my money. I think that I can do it better. Okay. And, especially in our country, I think there's a bubble that it's going to burst at some point, and when it does, it's not going to be good. And I think
in the
Wall
market?
Street, oh, yeah.
In the stock market?
There's going to be an adjustment.
So when you say invest in gold and silver, you're not talking about ETFs or anything fancy like that. You're talking about
physical
bars?
Physical bars, because, no matter what, it's always going to have a value. Right. It'll always be something there. Unlike stocks where, in our country, you go to sleep and everybody tells you everything's wonderful. You wake up and everything's gone. And we've experienced that. Fortunately, I wasn't invested in it at the time, but I'm very careful when it comes to investments like that.
Michael, as a retail investor then, what about diversification? I mean, that's what's drummed into everyone's head when you talk about investing, diversify, protect yourself.
I was going to say, because, just gold and silver sounds like, you're bracing for Armageddon, right?
Well, I don't think so.
Yeah.
That's been my experience, and I've done that rather successfully. And like I said, I always have something to hold on to. And, as far as diversification, I agree with that, but you have to have knowledge of what you're diversifying in and not trust somebody else to pick those spots for you, unless you know them so well and you have so much confidence and you've done a lot with them, throughout the years. That's what's worked for me.
Okay.
I simply can't let you go without putting a couple of questions to you, and these are questions that you've put forward actually yourself when we were having a chat during the break. I know you're here in Singapore to talk to an audience of people, and they're going to have the chance to ask you directly. But my question to you was, what question do you get most asked? Can you give us not just the questions, but the answers also?
I will, but I want to say this. I'm going to be at the Star Theater on Saturday night on the 23rd, and they can buy tickets at michaelfranceslive.com, and I promise everybody I will answer every question that's asked of me. We're going to open it up for a Q&A, and that's always curious for people. But, honestly, the most common question, there's 3. Number 1, have you ever killed anybody? Number 2, where's all your money buried? Because, I've
in gold bars,
allegedly,
As if you're going to tell them, right?
allegedly made billions of dollars. And number 3, where's Jimmy Hoffa buried? That's it, in that order.
Okay, answer the question.
I thought you weren't going to do that. But, You know, listen, as far as the life, I will say this. It is a violent life at times. And if you're part of the life, you're part of the violence. And there's no escape. And if anybody tells you differently, they're either not being honest with you or they weren't a made member like I was. And a made member means that I actually took an oath and got sworn in and became a soldier and then a captain in the family. And as far as Jimmy Hoffa, I can tell you this. He's not buried in the Meadowlands. You know, that's Giant Stadium. And they will never find his body. Now, I had nothing to do with it, but, you know, you hear things when you're in that life. And as far as where all my money is, you know, they say I've got money buried all over the place and, you know, in different countries, and they've been looking for it for 20 years, and I've been through more struggles than you can imagine. I'll say this. If it's there, I doubt I'll ever have an opportunity to use it, but you never know. We'll see what happens in the future.
Okay, direct, blunt, but honest question as well. I read somewhere that at one stage when you were trying to leave the life, you know, there were members, including your father, who had a contract out on you.
Yeah.
Is there a price on your head right now still?
Yes.
There is.
Yeah, the boss of my family was extremely upset when I walked away from that life. You can't do that, you know. And even though I didn't put anybody in prison, I didn't testify, you know, I was bringing in a lot of money, and you're not allowed to talk about the life, nor are you allowed to walk away. So he's, the only thing that saved me with him is that he's in prison for the rest of his life. My dad went along with the contract on my life. He had to, because when somebody brings you into that life, if you go bad, you're responsible. So my dad went along with it in order to protect himself, and I understood that at the time. Believe it or not, I wasn't even angry with him. I got it. So, you know, I say this. I spent 20 years on the street, and I knew the mentality of the people in that life very well. So I knew what to do to protect myself, and I had to do a lot over the years. But, you know, you mentioned the Fortune magazine article. Out of that list of 50, it was written in 1986, out of the list of 50, 44 of those men are dead. 3 of them are doing life in prison without parole, and here I am.
Okay.
So, you know, I just outlasted everybody.
Right.
But, you know, I can't go back to Brooklyn and say, hey, guys, I'm moving back into the neighborhood. I wouldn't last 24 hours. But,
All right.
you know,
Wow.
you try not to be silly.